Hi, welcome to Small Group. We are currently involved in church in a series called The Second Coming of Christ. This past Sunday, the topic was the Son of Man revealed. Now, that phrase, Son of Man, is important because Jesus used it as a title for himself during his ministry. On the one hand, it means ordinary man. To the Jewish people, like it says in the Psalms, what is man that thou art mindful of him, or the Son of Man that you even visit him? Well, Son of Man meant ordinary man. So Jesus used that title for himself because he wanted to identify with everyday people, sort of the everyman. But there was more to it than that, and by the end of his ministry, he makes that very clear. More specifically, we talked about how one of the most beloved prophecies, predictions of the Messiah in the Old Testament, that the people loved during the time of Jesus, was a vision that Daniel received from God, the prophet Daniel, in Daniel chapter 7. It was a vision of four great beasts representing empires that would arise from the sea, which is to say the Gentile nations, and would come and have dominion over that part of the known world, one after the other. And the fourth beast would then, as we learned and talked about, would come back again until a time when there would be an Antichrist, but then something wonderful would happen. So, whereas the prophecy was mysterious, the outcome was not mysterious. It was very clear, and it was loved greatly by the Jewish people. The outcome was that, Daniel said, I kept looking in the night visions, and I saw one like a son of man, coming with power, and coming on the clouds of heaven. And they understood this to mean that the Messiah would come and judge the world. And in the vision of Daniel, it said he was presented before God, the Ancient of Days. It's a phrase that means God. And he was given dominion over the entire earth forever and ever. Well, when Jesus Christ was arrested, because the leaders of that time envied him and were afraid of him, they brought him to a trial. It was really a mockery of a trial. And they tried to bring false witnesses against him, and none of that worked. So finally the high priest who was officiating that trial confronted Jesus and said, tell us once and for all, are you the Son of God or not? And Jesus' answer so outraged them that they condemned him to death. He said, I am the Son of God, and you will see the Son of Man coming in power, the right hand of power, and coming on the clouds of heaven. So it was clear to them and everybody in that situation, in that trial, that Jesus, in that moment of weakness, in that moment when he had been abandoned, in that moment when he was, so to speak, in custody, he claimed to be, in that moment, Daniel's supernatural, heavenly, conquering Messiah, Son of Man. And so the high priest tore his garments and said, basically, this is blasphemy because he's claiming to be from heaven. And he's also crazy because look at him. He's captured. He's weak. This is craziness. And so they condemned him to death. We now understand that that prophecy of Daniel and that prophecy of Jesus in that trial, which is, of course, the same vision, same prediction, will come true at the second coming of Christ, when he will come as the conquering Messiah, actually to the Mount of Olives, is what it says in Acts chapter 1. And he will come as the Son of Man. You see, the vision of Daniel was more than just a prediction. It was a statement by God of how God views human pride. And the second coming of Christ as the Son of Man was going to be God's ultimate statement to put down the pride of man. So the heads of those empires were described as beasts, the pride of man. But his Messiah would be the Son of Man. And so, once and for all, the humble, the meek will inherit the earth, so to speak. The humble Messiah, Jesus Christ, would put down the pride of man and judge the world. And so we talked about how until he comes again, until the second coming of Christ happens, we as his people are called to show his Son of Man humility to a lost world. Because when all is said and done, everyone's going to bow. The Bible says every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So they will either bow because they love him, as you and I will, or they will bow because he will be their judge. And so we must reach out to a lost world to prepare people for that day when the Son of Man will finally be revealed. God bless you. Hope you have a great discussion.